Greetings and welcome to the second mini lecture on Plato. So, my notes kind of reiterate or repeat some of the major themes from the first mini lecture. Of course, you know that Plato is the antithesis of Pericles. Pericles had extolled democracy and the common man, the common person, as did Lincoln in the Gettysburg Address. Plato's the exact opposite. He's emphasizing equality. He believes that the masses are ignorant. He's very distrustful of democracy. And in this particular case, the Republic is really designed to promote justice and rule by a philosopher king, philosopher queen, or perhaps a small oligarchy, a small group of enlightened people. Plato borrows from his teacher Socrates, illustrating that knowledge is indeed a higher value than power, and disagrees with the realists. So, for example, Thucydides, who is the famous chronicler of the Peloponnesian War, is credited with the statement that might makes right. Remember, I mentioned the Melian dialogue earlier, right? Where the strong will do as they will and the weak suffer as they must. And Plato and Socrates both say that knowledge is a higher value than power, and that in fact might does not always make right. And like Socrates, Plato believed that the highest form of happiness is attained when we nurture the human soul, when we pursue justice rather than self interest. And in fact, Aristotle, when he classifies democracy, and remember, Aristotle is a student of Plato, so we go Socrates is Plato's teacher, and then Plato is Aristotle's teacher, and then Aristotle teaches Alexander the Great. And I'll mention that when we get there later on. So Plato, like his teacher, is highlighting the notion that happiness is leading a just life. Now, I told you at the tail end of the last lecture that many political theorists believe that the Republic, Plato's work, is the blueprint for a perfect society. And I disagree with that personally. I instead look at it as the education necessary to produce such a society, if in fact you wanted to do this. Plato is a believer in order, he's a political idealist and not a realist. So let's kind of get into the textbook now and take a look at the Republic. First of all, Plato makes an assumption that is quite common in political theory. If any of you take an upper division course, for example, in political theory, and you talk about Karl Marx, for example, he believes in this notion. A lot of theorists do. And the assumption that Plato makes is that we are social creatures, that we're not able to function very efficiently in a solitary existence. And so the polis, which remember is the Greek city state, Plato makes the claim that the ideal size for a city state is around 5,000 people. And this is one of the other criticisms that Plato has of Athens. He believes that it is far too large to function very efficiently. So it isn't just that the political system is flawed, but structurally it's too large. So Plato has in his mind not the modern society of today. He's not talking about a country like ours with 330 million. He is trying to create an ideal state of 5,000, maybe 10,000 at most. So Plato, like a lot of theorists, say that we're social creatures. We require assistance from others. I know Hillary Clinton got a lot of criticism several years ago when she made this statement that it takes a village, right? Uh, that all of us are interdependent. That we need to be cooperative. And certainly that's what Plato is saying. Plato is saying we're social creatures. We require assistance from other people to survive. That certain people have certain talents in certain areas. But the key assumption, and what I would star, is the state is a natural extension of human activity. And it's intriguing because this goes back even to the Ionians, and Plato steals even from them, right? Where he compares a republic to a person, or to what he calls a soul. But in this particular case, he's saying that just as people have three critical parts, so too do republics, because republics are merely extensions of people. So there are three basic forces that motivate people, and these forces vary depending on the individual. So in some people, the first force is dominant, in others, the second, and in a few, the third. So the three basic forces that motivate people, and your book has a discussion of all three of these. The first is desire or appetite. I'll talk about that down below. The second is spirit or courage. And the third is reason. So Plato contends that each is present in every man in varying amounts. And that begins to sound a little bit like Pericles, right? That all people have desires and appetites, all people have spirits and courage, and all people have reason. Certainly, that's why Pericles believes that greatness can come from any class. But Plato says that even though all people have all of these forces, but one is predominant in every man. And therefore, what you need to do is you need to put people into the class that fits their basic motivation. Some people have contended that this is kind of the basis of fascism, and that the fascist is stealing from Plato here. I don't think that Plato certainly was thinking of this in fascist terms, but certainly this notion that society should be divided into classes based on what the dominant force is for the individual uh, is an interesting notion. And I would claim that it's very difficult to determine motivation. So when we talk about motivation, for me personally, my criticism of this is that motivation is the absolute hardest thing to determine in human behavior. You can watch five people engage in the same activity, and various things might be motivating them, even though they're doing the same thing. And I'll just give you an example of my kids. Both of my children were swimmers. They were both successful swimmers. They both swam at the high school level. They both swam at the college level. But for my daughter, swimming, what motivated her was exercise to keep her in shape and to have a group of friends. It was a social activity primarily. My son, on the other hand, it was a very competitive activity, and it was an activity to excel in and to try to get a college scholarship. Both of them put many hours in the pool. Both of them were doing the same activity, but their motivation was different. And just watching them, the temptation might be, well, they're swimmers because they love it or whatever it happens to be. And so when Plato is telling us that different forces motivate people, my response to that is I would agree with that people are motivated by different things, but determining that motivation is incredibly different. Now, you will notice that I've underlined where it says a society needs all three of these forces and classes, and all are needed in society. and therefore justice. And I saw one political theorist use the word harmony, but I'll say justice is a product of class division and specialization of function. In other words, justice is harmony, and it is harmony that produces societal order. And once again, when I ask you on the exam, according to Plato, what was the highest political value, it's societal order. So justice is the development of internal harmony in the individual. It is the development of internal harmony in the state. And the harmony is only achieved when external conditions are properly ordered. In other words, he believes that people should be put into the positions for which they are best suited. So he divides them into the first group, those that are motivated by appetite. These are your craftspersons. These are your artisans. These are the people who are motivated by self-interest, by appetite. So according to Plato, these are people engaged in economic activity. These are your business people. These are your farmers. These are your merchants. Their function is to produce economic activity to ensure social sustenance. The pursuit of self-interest is crucial for economic success. But self-interest translates very, very poorly when providing for the public good. So you don't want the craftspersons and artisans leading your state, because you want those people to pursue the public interest. But you want your people, your bankers, your merchants, your farmers, your business people, you want them pursuing self-interest, because self-interest will create greater productivity, greater wealth to sustain society as a whole. So Plato would say the parallel at the individual level is that for humans, it is our appetites, and behavior is guided by our impulses and our desires and our urges, often without regard for consequences. And therefore, according to Plato, individual appetites, as well as the appetites of the business people, need to be checked by higher impulses. So the artisans and the craftspersons should be taught restraint. And in this case, restraint is understanding that as craftspeople, your service is vital to the state. You produce wealth that allows for the financing of government, the financing of a military. It is through the pursuit of self-interest that farmers can be productive and make money, and in the meantime provide the vital service of feeding the populace. But the craftspeople have to be taught restraint. And the primary reason for this restraint is so that they do not try to rise from economic life into public life. And here is where you see that huge break from Pericles to Plato, because for Pericles, the farmer, the craftsperson, can become the next great statesman, can become the next great state leader or general. And for Plato, he essentially wants to segregate society. He wants economic man to provide the base material sustenance for society. And those people should pursue self-interest, those people should make money, and that self-interest parallels itself into the economic well-being of society. However, they should not try to rise up to the auxiliaries or the guardians. And in the next mini lecture, I will talk about these other two classes and we'll especially focus in on the guardian class.